Part 2 of the gripping. I was often bullied because I got pregnant before graduation, unaware of them that my baby daddy was the cold alpha. The aftermath of the council's decision, Ellier never expected returning to school to feel so heavy. The moment he stepped through the gates, whispers sliced the morning air like knives. Is it true? He was summoned by the Alpha Council. Raven Nightborn defended him. Do you know what that means? Ellier walked with his head down, clutching the strap of his bag. He tried to keep his breathing steady. His baby kicked softly, a reminder that he wasn't alone. But the attention, the stares, were crushing. Just a few weeks ago, everyone only whispered about his pregnancy. Now they whispered about Raven. And the worst part? They whispered about the two of them together. Raven's behavior changes. Move. A cold voice echoed behind Ellier. Raven. Tall, broad-shouldered, uniform immaculate, silver eyes as unreadable as moonlight on ice, yet somehow warmer than before. Students parted instantly, giving him a clear path. He didn't even glance at them. Raven walked straight to Ellier. No, too close. So close Ellier could smell his scent, mint and storm wind, stronger now than ever. Ellier's breath hitched. He felt a faint warmth swirl in his stomach. Something instinctive. Something he desperately didn't want others to notice. You're early, Raven murmured, voice quieter than usual. Ellier blinked. Why you're all so early? I said I'd meet you at the front gate. Ellier looked down, embarrassed. You didn't have to. Raven's eyes narrowed slightly. I did. Those two words carried so much unspoken intensity Ellier's pulse sped up. And unfortunately, everyone nearby heard it. Rumors start spreading, again. Within minutes, the school hallways buzzed like an angry hive. So it's true then, Raven claimed him? Wait, claimed as in, officially? I thought he hated Omegas, especially pregnant ones. Then why is he acting like Ellier is his mate? Ellier's face flushed with humiliation. He wanted to shrink. Don't listen to them, Raven murmured, leaning slightly closer without touching him. They'll shut up eventually. Ellier shot him a distressed look. Why are you acting like this suddenly? Raven paused. His usually cold eyes flickered with something softer, too soft for him. He opened his mouth to answer. But a group of alpha athletes walked by, snickering loudly. Careful, Ellier. Get too close and you'll trigger the alpha's rut early, one taunted. Raven's aura dropped instantly, freezing the corridor. Say that again, Raven said in a terrifyingly calm voice. The air thickened as his alpha pressure pulsed outward, controlled, but sharp enough to make the entire group flinch. Sorry, Raven? They ran. Ellier tugged Raven's sleeve weakly. Don't threaten them. Raven looked down at the faint tug like it was the only thing grounding him. Then he inhaled deeply, aura retracting. Fine. But his eyes were anything but calm. Lunch break, closeness that feels dangerous. Ellier tried eating alone under a tree in the school courtyard. He barely took 3 bites when a shadow fell over him. Raven sat down beside him wordlessly. Too close again. Again with that intoxicating scent, mint, rain and something deeper. Students froze on the walkway, stunned. Raven, people are staring. Let them. Ellier nearly choked. Raven continued quietly, eyes on him. You shouldn't be alone. Not until things settle. Why? Ellier whispered. You hated attention before. Raven looked away, jaw tightening. I don't hate it when it's for the right reason. Ellier blinked. He didn't understand. What reason? Raven didn't elaborate. But his fingers brushed Ellier's, accidentally or maybe not, and Ellier gasped as warmth shot up his arm. Something was very, very wrong with his body. Or maybe, with their bond. Ellier's concern grows. That evening, Ellier walked home from school, Raven trailing a few steps behind like a silent guardian. Raven, why are you acting like this? He finally asked. Raven paused. His expression was unreadable, but his voice was low, almost strained. The council's decision changed things. And I. His fingers twitched as if reaching for Ellier but stopping halfway. I can't risk losing you or the baby. Ellier's heart twisted painfully. Raven, you don't have to take responsibility. I'm not doing this out of responsibility. Ellier froze. Raven stepped closer, stopping only inches away. Whether you understand it or not, he whispered, you're not alone anymore. Ellier stared at him, feeling something stir inside, warm and frightening. Raven, what are you not telling me? Raven looked away. Things that I should have told you a long time ago. His voice held fear. Real fear. But before Ellier could ask more, Raven's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face darkening instantly. Ellier, go straight home, Raven ordered, urgency sharpening his tone. What? What happened? Just go. Raven's silver eyes glowed faintly, an alpha warning. And then, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Ellier with an uneasy feeling, like something dangerous was approaching. Part 2 had barely begun, and Ellier already sensed a storm coming. The alpha bond symptoms begin. Ellier woke the next morning feeling strange. His body was warm. Too warm. Not feverish, just hot from the inside out, like something pulsed beneath his skin. The baby shifted restlessly as if responding to an unseen presence. Is something wrong? He whispered, placing a hand over his belly. He tried to ignore the sensation. He had school, a test, homework to submit. But the moment he walked through the school gates, Raven's scent hit him like a wave. Rain. Cold wind. Except today, it felt intoxicating. Ellier staggered slightly, gripping the strap of his bag. His breath shortened. His heart raced. And worst of all, his body reacted on its own. Omega instincts. No, not now, Ellier whispered, cheeks flushing. He pressed a hand against his chest, trying to steady himself. Raven approaches. Ellier. Raven's voice was closer than expected. Ellier looked up, and instantly regretted it. Raven stood inches away, tall and imposing, silver eyes piercing through the morning light. His aura felt stronger today, denser. The moment their gazes met, Ellier's knees went weak. Raven stepped forward, sensing something off. Ellier stepped back reflexively, only to hit the gate behind him. Raven frowned. You're pale. What happened? I'm fine, Ellier stuttered, trying to breathe normally. Just didn't sleep well. Raven leaned closer, sniffing subtly near Ellier's hair. The low rumble in Raven's chest said enough. You're overheating, Raven said quietly. Your scent changed. Ellier's eyes widened. He hadn't even noticed. Omega's scent shift, triggered by proximity to a bonded alpha. But their bond was supposed to be dormant, right? It's nothing, Ellier insisted weakly. I'll be fine. Raven's jaw tightened, but he stepped back, only slightly. Stay close today. If anything feels wrong, find me immediately. Ellier nodded, embarrassed. He didn't want to need Raven. But right now, his body did. Symptoms grow worse. By lunch, things had escalated. Ellier couldn't focus. His temperature rose. A buzzing sensation filled his chest like thousands of tiny wings. The worst part? Raven's presence was the only thing that soothed it. Whenever Raven appeared, even across the courtyard, Ellier's dizziness faded slightly. Whenever Raven disappeared, the heat bloomed again, spreading through his limbs. It was humiliating, terrifying, and unmistakable. Omega pre-bond symptoms. The bond between them was reawakening. Against Ellier's will, a misunderstanding forms. In the late afternoon, Ellier was packing his things when Raven approached him again. Ellier, Raven said quietly, we need to talk. Ellier stiffened. Not now, please. You're shaking, Raven murmured, reaching instinctively for Ellier's wrist. Ellier flinched back like he'd been burned. Raven froze. A crack formed in his expression, shock, then something wounded. You don't want me near you, Raven said softly. Is that it? Ellier's chest clenched. No. It wasn't that. His body simply reacted too strongly. Being near Raven ignited everything he was trying to suppress. But Raven misunderstood completely. I get it, Raven said with a forced calmness. You're scared. Maybe of me. Maybe of what happened. Maybe of the baby. Ellier's eyes widened. Raven, that's not. Raven looked away, voice low. I won't force you. If you don't want me involved anymore, say it. Ellier took a shaky breath. Raven, I don't want to push you away. But being close to you right now, it makes my body react. I don't know what's happening to me. Raven's eyes sharpened. You're having symptoms? Ellier hesitated, too long. Raven misread it again. Forget it, he muttered. I'm making things worse. Then he turned and walked away. Ellier reached out instinctively. Raven. But Raven didn't look back. And the moment Raven's scent disappeared, Ellier collapsed to his knees, gasping. The heat inside him surged painfully, like the bond was screaming for its missing half. A silent panic. Ellier curled in on himself, trembling. I can't breathe. His vision blurred. His heart pounded too fast. And the baby kicked violently, reacting to the unstable bond. No, please, calm down. Ellier pressed a hand against his belly, tears welling. He didn't understand what was happening. But one thing was unmistakably clear. Raven's distance was making it worse. Dangerously worse. Something inside Ellier, instinct, biology, bond, cried out desperately for Raven. But Raven had walked away thinking Ellier didn't want him. And Ellier didn't know how to fix it without confessing the truth. That his body needed the alpha who hurt him. Who protected him. Who claimed him without realizing. And whose bond was waking up again. The return of someone from Raven's past, ***. Ellier still felt shaky the next morning. He hadn't slept much. His Omega symptoms were getting worse. Heat waves, sensitivity to scent, emotional instability. He clutched his textbook tightly as he walked through the school gates, praying Raven would be there. But he wasn't. For the first time in weeks. Raven wasn't waiting. Ellier's heart sank. Was Raven still upset from yesterday? He swallowed the ache and continued inside, only to find the hallway buzzing with excited, nervous whispers. Have you seen him? He's gorgeous, like a real noble alpha. And dangerous. I heard he's from one of those ancient alpha clans. Why is someone like him transferring here? Ellier blinked. Someone new? His stomach twisted with anxiety. A new alpha walks in. The crowd in the hallway suddenly parted like water. And then Ellier saw him. A tall figure strolled in with relaxed confidence, wearing the school uniform as if it were a royal cape. Dark hair with subtle red undertones, golden eyes that glowed like embers, broad shoulders, and a smirk that was both charming and predatory. He radiated alpha dominance so heavily that some students instinctively stepped back. The newcomer scanned the hallway lazily. Then his gaze landed on Ellier, and he froze. For a moment, his expression changed. Not lust. Not confusion. Recognition. Ellier's breath caught. Do I know him? But no, he'd never met someone like this. Right? Kale approaches Ellier. The alpha walked straight toward him, ignoring everyone else. Ellier's heart raced with instinctive fear. His body trembled. His scent weakened from stress. When Kale stopped right in front of him, Ellier felt dwarfed, physically, emotionally, instinctively. Kale was tall. Intimidating. Beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. He leaned slightly down, eyes glowing. You're Ellier, right? Ellier swallowed. Yes. Kale smiled slowly, almost too gently. So it is you. Ellier blinked. Do we know each other? Kale chuckled softly. Not personally. But I know of you. That didn't help Ellier's nerves at all. Before Ellier could respond, Kale's gaze moved lower, landing on his small pregnant belly. A flicker of something unreadable passed over his face. And you're carrying a pup, Kale murmured. Interesting. Ellier backed up a step. Kale lifted a hand slowly, almost tenderly. Don't touch him. A cold voice sliced the air. Raven arrives. Raven stood a few meters away, aura falling like ice. His expression was emotionless. Too emotionless. Dangerously calm. But his eyes, his silver eyes, were glowing faintly, betraying a deep, primal fury. Students scattered in fear. Kale didn't seem fazed. He stayed exactly where he was, smirking. Raven, Kale greeted casually. It's been a while. Ellier froze. They know each other? Raven's jaw clenched. Why are you here? Kale shrugged. Transferring. Continuing my education. He leaned closer to Ellier again, bold, deliberate. And maybe catching up with some old connections. Raven's aura snapped outward so sharply that half the hallway gasped. Step away from him, Raven said softly. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Kale clicked his tongue. Still territorial, I see. Some things never change. Ellier looked between them, confused and overwhelmed. Raven, who is he? Raven didn't answer. Kale did. Kale Ravian. Alpha Prince of the Crimson Claw lineage. He smiled, fangs subtly showing. And the only alpha who's ever defeated Raven Nightborn in combat. Ellier's eyes widened. Raven's fist tightened so hard Ellier heard the faint crack of bone. Raven tries to pull Ellier away. Raven stepped forward and grabbed Ellier's wrist, firm but not painful. Let's go. Ellier felt his Omega symptoms immediately ease from Raven's proximity. The heat that had been tormenting him all morning softened. But Kale blocked their path. You're taking Ellier away? How predictable. Move, Raven growled. Kale smiled lazily. I just want to introduce myself. You're not needed. You don't get to decide that. Kale's gaze sharpened at Ellier. Especially not when you're the reason his bond is unstable. Ellier stiffened. Raven froze. Kale smirked wider, recognizing their reaction. That's right, Kale whispered near Ellier's ear. You're experiencing heat waves, sense sensitivity, and emotional fluctuations, aren't you? Ellier's eyes widened. How did he know? Kale's voice dropped to a low purr. Those are symptoms of a reawakening bond. A very strong one. And if something disrupts it... His golden eyes flicked to Raven. The Omega suffers. Raven's aura burst outward, violent, protective. Don't talk about him like that, Raven snarled. Kale's smile only grew more satisfied. So I'm right. The tension breaks, for now. Teachers rushed over, sensing the explosive aura clash. Nightborn. Raven. Stop this immediately. Raven's grip on Ellier tightened protectively as Kale casually stepped back. This isn't over, Kale said softly. I'll see you around, Ellier. Ellier shivered, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming alpha pressure that lingered in the air. Raven pulled him closer and led him away without saying a word. But Ellier could feel it. Raven was shaking. Not from fear. From barely restrained rage. And beneath that, something else. Possessiveness. Jealousy. And a deep, old fear Ellier had never seen before. He looked up at him softly. Raven, who is Kale to you? Raven's hand tightened around his. Someone who knows too much about me. Ellier frowned. And about me? Raven didn't answer. But his silence said enough. Kale's arrival wasn't a coincidence. He came for Raven. He came for his secrets. And maybe, he came for Ellier. The baby's first kick. Ellier had read about first kicks in the pamphlets the clinic gave him. Fluttering, a tiny nudge, a flutter that felt like proof that something inside him was alive and growing. He hadn't known how much it would mean until it happened. They were under the cherry tree in the courtyard. Raven beside him, both of them pretending this was an ordinary moment. The afternoon light sifted through pink petals, falling in quiet specks across Raven's coat. Raven had a book in his lap but wasn't reading. He kept stealing glances at Ellier as if afraid the moment might vanish. Ellier pressed a hand to his stomach, more out of habit than hope, and the world changed. A small, warm kick, like a bubble popping, rolled under his palm. The sound Raven made was not a word but something smaller, softer. His expression, so used to being unreadable, broke open with awe. Did you feel that? Ellier whispered, breath trembling. Raven looked at him as if he'd been offered a private miracle. He leaned in, palm hovering over Ellier's as if he could feel it through skin. It's strong, Raven said, voice low. He's strong. For a suspended minute they existed only in that fragile orbit. The baby between them, the quiet intimacy, Raven's hand inching closer until it rested lightly atop Ellier's. Ellier felt warmth unfurling where there had been days of terror and shame. Then a shadow cut across the grass. Kale. He moved with easy arrogance, the golden flash of his eyes catching the sunlight. He stopped a few steps away and smiled like someone who'd walked into the middle of a private scene on purpose. Well, how domestic, Kale drawled. Hard to imagine the cold Alistair air as domestic. Raven tensed beside Ellier, his protective aura flaring a depth cooler than the spring air. Ellier felt the instant chill tug against him and, worryingly, also a sudden spike of agitation in the baby. Kale came closer, all subtle charm and sharp edges. He looked at Ellier with a light that made Ellier feel seen in a way that wasn't safe, like an animal shivering under a hunter's gaze. Is that your pup? Kale asked, head tilted. The question had the politeness of a poisoned Saturnine gift. Raven's reply was a bare line. It is. Kale's smile sharpened. Interesting. You two are getting bolder. Ellier's pulse spiked. The closeness between Raven and him had been enough to calm the bond for weeks. Kale's presence cracked that fragile calm into jagged edges. The baby kicked again, stronger, and Ellier doubled over for a second on reflex. Raven's hand tightened on the fabric at Ellier's waist, steadying him. Are you all right? Ellier nodded, though his cheeks were hot. Ah yes. It was just a stronger movement. Kale leaned in, his voice barely a whisper meant to carry. Be careful. When a bond reawakens, a lot changes. Some alphas don't like their destinies rewritten. Raven's jaw tightened. He looked as if he wanted to strike Kale where he stood. Instead he moved, stepping fully between Kale and Ellier, blocking the sun and Kale's smile with the hard line of his shoulders. Leave him alone, Raven said. The warning had teeth. Kale didn't retreat. Instead he took one more, slow look at Ellier's belly and then at Raven. I'll be watching. He walked off like a threat that didn't need to raise its voice. Ellier watched him go, then looked up at Raven, who had gone still as stone. The baby nudged again and Raven's fingers brushed Ellier's hand. There are things coming, Raven said quietly, voice threaded with an emotion Ellier hadn't felt from him before, fear. I don't want you to face any of it alone. Ellier wanted to say yes, to lean into that promise. But the memory of Kale's look dug at him. What kind of man watched him as if sizing up prey? And why did Raven look like he was bracing for war? Ellier placed his palm over Raven's. It was a small gesture, but it anchored them both. Then don't let me, he whispered. Raven's fingers closed around his in a gentle, private claim. The cherry blossoms drifted down as if the world were holding its breath. Raven's secret is exposed. Kale didn't limit his interference to threatening comments. He worked the corridors, the rumors, the teachers, wherever breath traveled. He pinned threads to student forums and left hints with the more scandal-hungry tabloids that scrolled across the academy screens. The day the rumor broke felt like being put under a bright, surgical light. It began with a whisper, Raven's lineage isn't what everyone thinks. Then a post, Alistair Heir has Bloodmoon ties, dangerous blood. Then a teacher's hushed conference. Within hours the whole school was a chorus of questions and stares. Ellier noticed it first at the clinic appointment. The doctor who had been kind faced him with a new, thin expression. You should be careful, she murmured. People are talking. Ellier's skin prickled. About what? She lowered her voice. There are stories about Raven's family. Old rivalries. Some things parents mention when they talk about history like it's a warning. Ellier swallowed. The baby pushed gently, a tiny heartbeat between them like an answer that was neither yes nor no. By lunch, Kale had made sure a student blog had published more than hints. Old rumors revived and twisted into new shapes. Raven's bloodline carries the Bloodmoon mark, feared, cursed, hunted. Students whose voices had been quiet now had headlines in their mouths. Raven noticed the shift immediately. Where he had previously weathered stares with that same distant calm, now people recoiled when he walked by, as if his presence carried static. One afternoon, Kale cornered Ellier in the empty music room. He had that same slow smile. But this time he pushed. You know why I'm here, Kale said. Because your life is a chess piece. Because Raven's past is messy. You should be careful what you attach yourself to. Ellier stared at him, every nerve raw. What do you want from me? Kale's eyes glittered. I want you to see the truth. Raven comes from a line people fear. If word of your child's bloodline leaks, well, it will change everything. Parents will remove their children from your classes. The council won't be as lenient. You will be alone again. Ellier felt cold but also fierce. You can spread rumors, he said, voice steadying, but you won't touch us. Kale's smile widened. We'll see. That night, Ellier discovered something worse. Raven had vanished. At first, Ellier assumed he was out searching for Kale, or confronting the people whispering about him. Days stretched without Raven's check-ins. Guards at Raven's house were tight-lipped. Raven's usual routines were gone. The visits to the clinic, the quiet walks on the grounds, the way he would always appear at the gate to walk Ellier home. Ellier called. No answer. He left messages that collected dust. Rumors metastasized. Raven had left because the Bloodmoon truth made him an outlaw. Raven had fled to avoid the council. Ellier panicked. The Omega symptoms that had been softening with Raven's proximity flared back to dangerous levels. Friends tried to help, but the whispers turned cruel. He's back to being weak again. Without the alpha he's nothing. Kale's smirk grew larger when he next passed Ellier in the halls. Raven had hidden himself the way he'd hidden in the past, pulling away because he thought distance would keep Ellier safe. But this choice hurt more than any whispered insult. The bond reawakened and craved him. Without Raven, the symptoms grew worse. With Raven gone, Ellier was vulnerable in a sharper way than before. At night Ellier would press his hand to the belly and whisper, "Daddy, where are you?" The baby kicked like an answer that was only partly comforting. Only later did Ellier learn the truth. Kale hadn't merely spread rumors, he'd bribed a few skeptical elders and leaked a falsified dossier about Raven's ancestry, connecting him to a feared Bloodmoon branch. The pack's whispers were not all true, but they were loud enough to isolate Raven. And Raven, whose pride and shame were ancient and tangled, had chosen exile over facing the council in public, believing his absence would protect Ellier from the political fallout. Ellier's desperation grew into a fierce, raw need. He refused to be the passive piece in Kale's game. If Raven would not come, Ellier would not wait quietly in the dark. Ellier takes the fall. Ellier's choice was rash. It came from the small, sharp place in his chest that had been hardened into survival. He started answering Kale's provocations publicly. He stood in the dining hall and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Raven is here. He's protecting me. You spread lies and you'll be responsible for them." He refused to back down when students shoved him. He filed a formal complaint about the falsified documents and demanded the council investigate. It should have been a brave move. Instead, Kale twisted it. Kale used the very attention Ellier drew to redirect suspicion, planting seeds that Ellier had been complicit in fabricating the dossier, that he had staged his own exposure to win Raven's pity and attention. He whispered false witnesses. A video clip appeared showing Ellier outside a counselor's home on the same day documents were leaked. The clip was doctored. Voices in corridors turned sharp again. Did Ellier trick everyone? Is he scheming to climb up by using his baby? Ellier became their scapegoat. Teachers who had defended him before began to avoid confrontation. Even Mira looked at him with uncertainty. Fear had a way of making people second-guess those they once trusted. Raven still hadn't returned, and every day of silence made the accusations cut deeper. One night, a crowd gathered outside his dorm. A small group of students began chanting words designed to shame and frighten. Liar. Traitor. Fake mother. Someone shoved a bottle. It shattered at Ellier's feet and someone else shoved him to the ground. Someone else, angry, cruel, threw a smoke bomb that made the air sting and eyes water. Ellier scrabbled to his feet, panicked, clutching his belly. The baby's movements became frantic and strong enough to buckle his knees. The world narrowed to sirens and the roar of voices. Then the shove came from behind, hard enough to send him sprawling down a flight of steps. Pain lanced through him, hotter and brighter than anything he'd felt since his collapse during PE. He tried to stand. The world tilted. Nausea hit with the force of a wave. He could feel the baby thrashing. "Help!" he cried, but the crowd was a blur of faces and hate. Someone grabbed him, a stranger, and the next thing he knew he was being hauled toward the infirmary straight from the pavement. Teachers had finally intervened, alerted by the commotion, but the damage was done. A broken fall, a too fast heartbeat, and a baby in distress. At the clinic, hands worked around him. Machines beeped. The doctor's face went hard and pale in a way that made Ellier's blood run cold. "You've got to rest," she said, voice clipped. "We need to monitor him for possible preterm labor." Raven burst in like a gale the moment he heard. He looked worse than Ellier had ever seen, eyes rimmed red with exhaustion, hair mussed, coat torn. He moved with a terrifying, single-minded speed as if the world was a thing he could physically rearrange. He didn't do anything dramatic at first, he wouldn't. Instead he stood there, silent, staring down anyone who dared to speak. When the doctor told him what had happened, Raven's face went empty and then hot as the sun. He moved to Ellier's side with an instant, crude tenderness, scooping him up and refusing to put him down. Ellier's eyes met Raven's. There was an ocean of fury and something else there, relief, sorrow, and apology wrapped into one. "You idiot," Raven said quietly, voice breaking. "You should have waited. You shouldn't have done it alone." Ellier's lips trembled. "I couldn't." "You won't do anything without me," Raven snapped, not waiting for the apology he'd been offered 1,000 times earlier and still finding inadequate. He pressed a hand to Ellier's belly as the monitors hummed. The baby's heart raced, then slowly steadied under the pressure of Raven's presence as if the child recognized and calmed at that tether. The doctor's expression softened a fraction. "Keep him calm," she ordered. "And keep him monitored. He's unstable right now." Raven didn't so much as blink. He stayed, a shadow with hands and vigilance, until the worst of it passed. He sat on the clinic cot beside Ellier like a sentinel, fingers never leaving his hand. In the days that followed, the accusations about Ellier did not vanish, but they lost their cruelty in the presence of Raven's furious defense. Kale's smirk remained in the halls like a stain, but the narrative had shifted. The council could no longer ignore that a powerful alpha had staked everything on protecting one student. Raven's return, however, created a new problem. The council intensified their scrutiny into Raven's past. Kale had lit a fuse that could not be easily snuffed. Raven's secrecy and guilt were now under a microscope. And Ellier, fragile, pregnant, exhausted, had to prepare for the consequences of a fight he had started to fix and which had only devoured him in return. The night the packed grounds felt hollow. A thin mist crawled along the outer fences and the torches that usually lined the main path burned low, as if even fire were afraid to roar. Word had spread quietly through the ranks. Kale was mobilizing his influence and he was not content with rumor anymore. He wanted a show. Ellier sat sleepless in the small guest room Raven had insisted he use. The baby dozed in a cradle beside the bed, soft breaths like a tiny drum under the hush of the night. Every creak, every distant footstep made Ellier's heart jump. He pressed a hand to his stomach and tried to steady it, tried to steady himself. When the knock finally came at the outer gate, it was like a drumbeat announcing the storm. Raven answered with 3 silent enforcers. He was stripped of polish, no tailored coat, just a simple dark shirt soaked from a walk he must have taken. His silver eyes were cold coals. For the first time since the council, something else sat behind that ice. Something deeper, older, and dangerous. "Kale's outside," Raven said without preamble. His voice had the flatness of someone who'd been pushed too close to a cliff. "He brought a contingent. He's making a show. He wants a public reckoning." Ellier went very still. "Why would he? What does he want exactly?" Raven's jaw tensed. "To break me. To humiliate me in front of the council and the pack. And he hopes by doing that the fear around you will return." Ellier swallowed. "Then we face him together," he whispered, surprising himself at how steady his own voice sounded. Raven's hand hovered near his, not quite touching. "You don't have to be brave for me." "I don't want to be brave alone," Ellier answered. They moved together to the outer grounds, where a murmur of people had already gathered. Torches cast long, twitching shadows. Kale stood on a makeshift platform, golden eyes bright like knives, flanked by his own allies, lean, well-bred alphas who smiled as if they were watching a sport. "You made a big mistake, Raven," Kale called out, voice carrying. "Bringing an unbonded Omega into public life. You endangered your legacy. You endangered your pack." Raven's presence rolled outward, a low pressure that made murmurs hush into pin-drop silence. He stepped forward, every inch of him coiled. "You used falsehood to wound him," Raven said, eyes fixed on Kale. "That will not stand." Kale's smile widened. "And what will you do, Alistair? Claim him? Force the council's hand? Or will the bloodline scare them into exile? Tell me, which path will you choose?" Raven's palm curled as if around something tight. The air went thinner. Some of the elders shifted uneasily. Ellier felt it first in the center of his chest, a resonance like someone calling. The baby gave a confused, hard kick. The sensation in Ellier spread like a keyed note. His breath caught and he clutched the rail. Raven's eyes flicked to Ellier. Something ancient in him hummed like a struck bell. For a heartbeat, Raven looked older, older than he had any right to be, a lineage of battle and moonlit rites pressing at his skin. "You should leave," Raven warned Kale. "Before I show you the line you poke at." Kale laughed, but not without edge. "Show me then." Raven didn't move at the taunt. Instead he closed his eyes. Silence thickened until even torchlight seemed to hold its breath. Then the air shifted, a low, thrumming vibration that made the hair on Ellier's arms stand up. It was as if the ground itself remembered something long buried. The assembled pack felt it. Some of the older members' eyes widened with a recognition that had been sleeping in their bones. Raven's aura changed. Where it had been cold and contained, it opened like a wound, raw and molten. A halo of dark, smoky energy rose from him, coiling like a living thing. The elders' faces paled. Whispers of the Bloodmoon myth fluttered through the crowd like ghosts. Kale faltered. For the first time his cool mask cracked. He stepped back, not entirely sure what he'd conjured. Ellier's knees wobbled. The baby pushed strong enough to make him gasp. Fear flared from his core, but beneath it, an odd warmth. A tether to Raven that felt older and truer than politics or rumor. The bond they'd resisted, the sleeping pact of two halves, replied to Raven's change and thrummed loud and clear. Raven opened his eyes. They weren't just silver anymore, there was a burn within them. When he spoke it was softer, but every syllable carried an echo that seemed to touch the old stones of the yard. "I am as I always was," he said. "Blood will remember itself." The first of Kale's men backpedaled. A few younger alphas whispered prayers. Kale's jaw tightened, and his bravado returned like a snapped wire. "You can show off your temper, Raven, but I have evidence. The council will still listen to me." Raven took a single step forward. The ground felt colder underfoot. The air around Kale rippled in resistance, like water pushed by a hand. "You will not touch Ellier," Raven said. The words were iron. Then, suddenly, as if the restraint holding his rawer nature snapped, he exhaled a sharp, resonant roar that shook the torches. The Bloodmoon energy flared fully, not cruel, not blind, but intense and vast. Kale lunged, not with words but with movement, a calculated rush meant to split Raven's focus. He struck with speed and precision born of training and pride. The two alphas clashed like storms, aura against aura, steel against will. The sound was animal and awful. Sparks of dominance danced across the space between them. Ellier watched the fight rip through the circle. A part of him panicked. The baby, the people, the pack. He felt small, a fragile thing in the eye of two forces tearing the night. Then everything tilted. Kale's foot found Raven's flank and he twisted, sending Raven stumbling. Raven's arm swung, but it was not thoughtless. The movement tore something ancient loose within him. An echoing howl, and for a moment Raven became less the composed, distant leader and more something elemental and devastating. His aura overloaded, furious, luminous, a dark tide that bent the air. Kale fell backward, shocked, and then something else happened that no one expected. The ground under Kale cracked as if sensing the danger of what he had provoked. He scrambled up, pale, and the assembled pack cried out in alarm. Ellier could not bear to watch them fight for long. He moved forward before he could name why, propelled by a terror shot through with an aching love. Raven, stop. Please. Raven's eyes snapped to him mid-clash and the change was instant. Where the Bloodmoon had been a wildfire, it folded into a single raw channel aimed toward Ellier. Raven pushed through the roar and stumbled to his knees beside him, blood on his hand where Kale had grazed him. Ellier reached for Raven's face and found him shaking. Don't, Raven said, voice ragged. Don't you move. Get back. I can handle him. Ellier looked at Kale, triumphant, wounded, thoroughly human, and then back at Raven, whose chest rose and fell in uneven grabs. He thought of the months of solitude, the bullying, the whispers, the silent nights pressing a fist into his ribs. He thought of the tiny life sleeping nearby. The choice steadied in him like a small stone. No, Ellier said quietly with more force than he'd known he could find. He stood between them, arms outstretched like a poor shield. You will not fight for me to be hurt by your pride or his cruelty. We don't need his spectacle. Raven, stop. Raven's head snapped up. For a beat there was nothing but the sound of his blood in his ears. The Bloodmoon aura thrummed, hungry and angry. But there was also an ache at the core of it, the thing only Ellier could touch. Raven's hand closed over Ellier's, warmth meeting warmth. The vast power receded like the tide answering the moon. Kale spat something and backed away, his bravado spent and his allies jittery. He scanned the crowd, saw the pack's wavering loyalty to a spectacle he'd risked provoking, and made a slow, bowing retreat. This isn't over, he vowed. When the dust settled, the elders approached in a hush. Many of them wore the pale lines of being shaken, not just by the fight but by the proof that Raven carried a history the pack could not pretend was only rumor. Quiet, urgent questions ran like ripples. Raven sank to his knees, trembling slightly. Ellier steadied him, fingers threading into his hair. The baby, awakened by the tumult, fussed and then settled when Raven hummed a low, steady note. Raven's voice when he spoke to the elders was small, almost intimate. This is my bond. This is my responsibility. Whoever comes for them will come through me. The elders exchanged looks that were complicated with fear and respect. For the first time, many of them saw Raven not only as a ruler shaped by pack politics but as a man with impossible, ancient depth. The council could not easily dismiss what had happened. Ellier sank to his knees beside Raven, trembling but unbroken. He smelled of rain, of dust, and of Raven's iron-warm skin. He leaned close and whispered, "You don't have to carry it alone." Raven closed his eyes, a single tear tracking through the smear of dust on his cheek. The Bloodmoon's echo in his chest quieted to a steady pulse, tethered now, not by fear but by a presence that would not let it run. Above them, the moon broke free of clouds and spilled a cold, silver light across the yard. It felt like an acceptance. The past acknowledged, the present held, and a future that would be forged by more than rumor and fear. Kale's shadow retreated into the night, his threat lingering like a bruise. But for now the pack watched another truth. Raven would not be broken and Ellier would not be erased. They had each other, and the baby's quiet breath between them was the only verdict that mattered. The morning after the storm dawned quiet. Sunlight filtered through the shattered clouds, warming the courtyard where the remnants of last night's confrontation still lingered. Scorched earth from aura clashes, scattered leaves, and a faint mist that smelled of rain and dust. The pack moved cautiously, whispers subdued, not wanting to break the fragile calm. Inside the residence, Ellier and Raven sat on the floor beside the crib. The baby slept peacefully, cheeks flushed pink, unaware of the chaos that had roared outside the walls. For the first time in months the room felt like home. Ellier leaned against Raven, chest rising and falling with his steady breaths. He touched the baby's tiny fingers, careful not to wake him. "I can't believe it's finally quiet," Ellier whispered. Raven's hand brushed his hair, thumb tracing circles along his scalp. Quiet never lasts long in our lives, he said softly, voice low but tinged with something rare, warmth. But this moment we can keep. Ellier smiled faintly, feeling the weight of months of fear, separation, and bullying lift slightly. I thought I'd never feel safe again. Not after everything Kale did. Raven pressed a gentle kiss to his temple. And yet you were never alone. I was always searching for you. Always. The words sank deep. Ellier swallowed hard, feeling tears prick at the corners of his eyes. I needed you, he admitted quietly. Even when I didn't know where you were, I hoped. You don't have to hope anymore, Raven interrupted, voice soft but firm. I'm here. We are together. And Aiden? He looked down at the sleeping baby. We will raise him together. No one will take that from us. Ellier nodded, chest tightening at the raw honesty. He reached for Raven, threading their fingers together. Promise me something? Anything, Raven said without hesitation. Promise me, no more running. No more hiding. No more leaving me alone. Raven's thumb brushed over his knuckles. I swear it. I will never leave you again. Not for the council, not for politics, not for anything. I am yours, and Aiden's. Always. Ellier let out a shaky breath, leaning into him. For the first time he felt the weight of fear and loneliness lift entirely, replaced with a warmth that spread from his chest through every limb. Rebuilding the pack's trust. By mid-morning the pack had gathered outside. Raven, with Ellier by his side, addressed the elders and the council. His aura was calm now, controlled, but every word carried authority. Kale's lies will not dictate our pack, Raven said. Ellier and I will lead our family openly. We protect our own. And anyone who threatens them will answer to me. There were murmurs, some hesitant, some approving. The elders exchanged glances, realizing that Raven's power was not just authority, it was a deep, protective devotion that could not be broken. Kale, meanwhile, had retreated, though his golden eyes lingered in memory, a threat that would not vanish entirely. But the pack had seen Raven's commitment and the bond between him and Ellier, and that alone was enough to shift the tides of fear. A quiet celebration. That evening, the residence was alive with softer energy. Friends from the academy, the loyal guards, and a few elders who had stayed behind gathered quietly. Ellier and Raven sat on the couch together, baby in between them. Raven held the little one on his lap while Ellier stroked his tiny hair. Laughter rippled softly through the room as someone accidentally dropped a toy, causing the baby to squeal in delight. Raven glanced at Ellier, eyes reflecting both exhaustion and something deeper, contentment, relief, and love. We're finally a family, he murmured. Ellier nodded, pressing a kiss to Raven's hand. Yes, a real family. And no one can take that away. Raven's lips curved into the faintest smile, the kind reserved only for the moments he allowed himself to be vulnerable. I promise you, Ellier, this time I will never let anyone hurt us again. The baby cooed, stretching tiny arms toward them both as if sealing the promise. A glimpse of the future. Later that night, Raven stood at the window, holding Ellier close, both gazing out at the moonlit grounds. Kale's shadow had faded from the immediate horizon, but Raven knew the game of politics and bloodlines was never truly over. Yet with Ellier and Aiden beside him, he felt an unfamiliar peace. Ellier whispered against his chest, Raven, what will we do now? Raven's hand rested over Ellier's heart, feeling the rhythm of fear and hope intertwined. We live. We protect what's ours. And we grow stronger, together. The moon rose higher, bathing them in silver light. For the first time in a long time, Ellier allowed himself to believe in a future. One where love, family, and trust could survive even the darkest trials. Outside, faint winds carried a whisper of challenge, a reminder that the world was never entirely safe. But inside, the three of them, Raven, Ellier, and their baby, were finally home.